Okay, so anyway, we're here today to actually normally have a Friday morning class, but today is April the 26th, and it's the yearly anniversary of Ueshiba Osensei's passing, passed on April the 26th of 1969. And 1969 was also the year that I started. He passed in April. I started my first Aikido class in October of that year. So 1969 marks, his exit, but also the year that I came into Aikido. And I started with Robert Frazier at UC Santa Cruz. He started a club. He was a direct student of Ueshiba Osensei. And at that time, he was very closely connected to Robert Nato Sensei. They were training partners at world headquarters in Tokyo. We kind of had, similar interests in those days. I think as time went on, Robert Frazier Sensei was an academic. He actually took Aikido and founded the very first, I think, graduate PhD program in transpersonal psychology in North America, all right, somewhere in the peninsula. I can't remember exactly where, Menlo Park, Palo Alto, in that area. And Robert Nadeau Sensei was really very instrumental in the 70s when Aikido schools started opening. Okay, so anyway, that's kind of my background. They were both really close to Osensei, and they would collaborate during my first couple of years. About once a month, they would do a workshop together, which would be a Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. And it was held at the Mountain View Dojo, which at that time was located on Castro Street, which is now Restaurant Row. But in those days, it wasn't quite that developed or quite that notorious. So anyway, that's kind of April 26th. As I recall, I wasn't really aware of that so much, but in 1973, I had just finished 2 years of graduate work and gotten a master's degree. And I had sort of promised myself that after that was done, I'd go to Japan. And so I did, and I wound up training courtesy of Mary Heine Sensei, who had connections. She was training in Tokyo, but she had connections to this dojo in southern Japan, which was in that area that Osensei was his birth area. Okay, not his birthplace, Tanabe, but Shingu, both Wakayama Prefecture. And that dojo, Hikizuchi Sensei really observed a lot of the ritual and the spiritual tradition of what Osensei did. So it was a big, 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 big thing on April 26th. This was just maybe a week or so after I'd arrived. That was the date. It was huge. People, there were a number of other dojos and other people, and heads of other dojos came, and Hikizuchi Sensei chanted, which we'll do later this class, the norito, the formal Shinto purification prayers, sacred sounds. And I kind of remember vaguely that, when you sat on the floor, that the knees just really took it. And, it was, I remember it, although how much passed, the fact that my legs hurt so much. But the energy there was very intense. So anyway, today is April 26th, 2024. And actually, since my very first April 26th that I was conscious of, as Osensei's date of passing, that if you do the math, it was 51 years ago. Yeah, time does travel. But every year since then, a couple of years we're in Japan. I'm majority of that time I was back here. When I was back here, I was running a dojo, usually. Yeah, I think 1974. I just gotten back. I was training locally, UC Santa Cruz. My parents were they lived in Santa Cruz, so I was staying with them and training at UC Santa Cruz with Robert Frazier. I think Frank Duran Sensei was there, and actually, I think it was Stan Brannon Sensei who was actually co-teaching at Santa Cruz then. So I think Mary Heine Sensei, I believe, maybe Linda Holiday Sensei was back at that time. I think we got together and Mary did the chanting, and so we observed just a couple of people, the Osensei passing. So every year since 1973, I've observed something when, we've done something at the dojo every year. So anyway, I guess that's what we'll be kind of doing later today. Anything you want to add, if anything? I don't know.
I mean, the very first Aikido class I took was many years ago, but it was already it was in college with Don Levine Sensei, and that was like 1986. So that was considerably, 17 years after Osensei's passing. So he was already, at that point, a historical figure. I was something like 3 years old when he died. So obviously I was not aware of that occurrence at the time. But I've had the good fortune of studying with a number of Osensei's direct students, including, Nado Sensei and Mary Heine Sensei, and also Satome Sensei and Duran Sensei. So, I guess like you, I have a kind of composite view of experience filtered through a number of his students, right? So, it's an interesting time we're living in, right? The transition of Aikido from one guy to an ongoing project. And I think that's exciting. So I'm happy to be a part of the ongoing project. That's all I've got to say.
Okay. Yeah. Later, we'll be doing some sound work. Okay. And one thing that Nado Sensei and Frazier Sensei did at these workshops, they basically explored themes that they'd sort of gotten by coming in contact with Osensei. And so one of the things was we would do sound, chanting, simple, various syllables. And we do a lot of energy work, like, for example, the hands. You put your hands out and maybe begin to feel a kind of a current or a magnetic connection, left to right, right to left. And then, just sense that that's around you. We did a lot of work just with energy, a lot of meditation. And there would be an Aikido class on Saturday morning. And then there'd be another one Sunday morning, we would sleep over in Mountain View. And the rest of it was basically energy work. And part of it was just watching, again, home movies, no videos yet, of Osensei. And so we would watch him, and you know, that was actually the highlight of the weekend, you know. But you know, the whole thing was, I don't know. Yeah, it was. I see the memories of them are still pretty vivid. Okay. Anyway, what I thought we'd do is just we're segueing into some chanting. Okay, and one of the things that I tend to study, there's a section in this book, which is a biography of Osensei written by his son, Kishomaru, the Nidai, the second Doshu. Doshu is a title like leader, lord of the way. Technically, Osensei was Doshu, but he was Osensei. Okay? And then when he passed on, they kept the head of the Aikido lineage in the family. So Kishomaru, his son, became Nidai Doshu. There really was never any first Doshu, because Osensei was Osensei. And then the current Doshu is his grandson. So it's being kept along the family lines. The current Doshu's son is now, you know, called the Waka Sensei. That's usually the up and coming. And so he'll probably be the fourth, I assume. You know, he's being kind of groomed for that. So what I thought I'd do, though, there's a section in here that I kind of return to quite a bit. And one of the themes of this section is the subtle uses of ki, ki no myo yo. And, you know, there's just ki, you know, ki is everything, really. Everything comes out of ki, we come out of ki. The universe, if you kind of look at it, came out of ki. So therefore, ki is ever present. But ki no myo yo, the subtle uses of ki. Well, Sensei was using ki in a way that, you know, ki is a very broad term. In fact, in his autobiography, Sadaharu, who had a connection to Osensei, famous baseball player, he just said ki is a very dangerous word. You know, in a certain way, it's dangerous because what you put in front of it, ki amplifies. So let's say you put a certain thing in front of ki, like you put sick in front of ki, sickness. You put health in front of ki, health. And so if you kind of go into what you might call the subtle uses of ki, that, you know, has always been a real fascination to me. The Do Sensei and I, we kind of meet once a week just to go over that. And usually there's about a couple of phone conversations over what went on during the week. So we keep active on that front. And it's, I would say it's around, but maybe not quite so visible. Most people are caught up in other aspects of Aikido, which is fine. Okay. Anyway, what I'm going to read here, and the term hibiki, I heard this in Japan, Daiuchu no hibiki, hibiki, all right, sound current. That was the way it was translated in. Resonance, okay? But just to read Osensei's direct words, but they've been translated. The hibiki of the body is generated by the unification of mind and body. Once it is generated, it is attuned to the hibiki of the universe. As these two hibiki interact with each other, the ki of Aikido is created. That is, the hibiki of the body echoes or reverberates with the hibiki of the universe. And this path of Yama Bikos, translated here as echo, but it's a mountain echo, Yama, mountain. Is the supreme truth of Aikido. Okay, so one of the things right here. There's most of ki is ordinary ki. What is ordinary ki? We have a dialogue here. We exist in a very dense world. We bump into things. We react mainly to what's going on outside. And things that are created, things that conflict, or self-interest is a major one. Okay? Self-importance. And that kind of clouds us from what he's talking about, the subtle uses of ki, the mountain echo. And so Ueshiba Osensei was very big on purification, which is, misogi, which is kind of tied to Shinto. But it's a broader topic than that. But he was Japanese. He used a lot of Shinto cosmology. The chants we're doing later are norito. They're Shinto chants. And I believe they probably come from the Omoto tradition. There are probably variants of these, okay? I mean, if you look at Major League Baseball, there's the Yankees and the Giants and the Dodgers and everything, but that's all baseball. But each team probably has its own personality, its own sort of uniqueness within that. Therefore, I'm sure there are probably other readings of these sounds because they're very ancient. And I remember Nado Sensei, he kind of talked to me once, and he's called into the office by Osensei. And so Osensei asked him, Nado, do you know the old sounds? And Nado Sensei said, no. And then Osensei moved on and said, that's okay. You don't really need to. You don't need to know them to understand Aikido. But, what the old sounds were, I surmised at the time that he was talking about the norito, the chants for purification that we're going to do. And that's about it. I mean, I think in the Nado Sensei's case, it took a great amount of study. And to be honest with you, when I do the whole thing, I'm chanting very ancient Japanese, much of which I don't understand at all. And I don't want to understand it. I'm very conscious of the fact that energies move. And when Osensei talks about the hibiki of the body, there are other ways of generating that. But then the universe itself is kind of like a sound current resonance, and the two, like a universe is a magnet and the body is a magnet, and one or tuning fork, okay, and the one goes bong bong bong, the other one goes bong bong bong, and it's a kind of a resonance back and forth. So that's kind of one of the things about hibiki, echo, mountain echo, okay. But if you just take your hands here, left to right, right to left, you may pick it up as kind of like a current or a magnetic field. Okay. And that's something that's always going on. But our dialogue here, or our attention goes into other things. Now, if we were to say, for example, that, like I starting to feel what we might call ki. Now, let's just say that ki in general, but ki starts to interact or feel with me, what I'm going through. There's a personalization. The universe is very vast. Ki is very vast. And I could feel ki and look at it, think about it, study it, but feel, experience it to some degree. And then there's kind of potentially a direct line where ki starts to feel me. And there's an echo back and forth. Now, I'm conscious of the fact that when I kind of work that echo effect, my mind quiets down. There's an immediacy right here, right now. I can read about this stuff and think about it and try to figure it out, but the noisy mind gets in the way of things. Easy. As we start to explore kind of that echo effect, things start to reverberate. Let's see if I can go a little bit more into this text. Okay. Yeah, one of the things that happens here. Just like you can go this way, it's harder. But you have right echoing off of left and back and forth. You kind of pick that energy up. But one thing that's always going on is your breathing. And one thing that also was highlighted here outside of hibiki is in Japanese is binyo na kokyu no henka. I actually talked to Linda Holiday Sensei, and she's read the whole thing in the original Japanese. And that's called the subtle changes in breath. So the breath, after a while, becomes kind of like what you might call an alternating current. It has a certain sort of rhythm, resonance to it. And then possibly in a certain way, that starts to attune to the universe having a kind of a resonance, or the universe, once it starts to notice us, you feel ki, ki feels you, you feel some degree of the universe starts to feel you back. And so when you kind of generate your in breath, out breath, kind of like an alternating current, it starts to tune into the universe and its sort of rhythm with itself. And it's another form of the echo, okay? For me, anyway, right? Now, reading here, the subtle changes in breathing creates equally subtle change in the key in the vacuum, okay, which doesn't get defined here. But what comes next? That generates waves of both great and small magnitude, and through the change in waves, one can recognize how the mind and body are purified. When this happens, one's breath gently assimilates itself with the universe and begins to expand. As this breathing takes place, one experiences unification. If the act of breathing can become part of the universe, real but unseen spirits, energies, probably in Osensei's term, kami, will begin to gather as if to protect you. Okay, he gives it a name. This is the beginnings of Aiki Myo O, which is distinct from Myo Yo. So, you know, this stuff is pretty wild. But one of the things, let's just say, you know, we kind of work the hands here. And, you know, if you kind of do this, you know, you go, well, yeah, I can feel something in the hands, but you sort of have to imagine and feel that there is a larger field of that around you. And then when they sort of connect, let's say a word there, waves are generated. And those waves, as they're generated, form shapes. And therefore, you're kind of, you know, at some more of a manageable level, you're starting to understand maybe Osensei's view of things like ki. The ki of the universe, his own ki had a unification. The ki of the universe was kind of like an ally. So he uses the term yo-o. These unseen energies is coming. And really what you're doing in connecting you with that and that with you is creating a harmony. You and it and you. And therefore what happens in interaction takes place within that harmony. And so, you know, something happens. The harmony that you're a part of, in some sense, is a protective sense. And so a sense they demonstrated off of attacks and everything. In some sense, you know, yes, he was blending with the attacker, but in some sense, you know, he was like the situation was a circle. He was the center. The two vibe together. So when there was motion, is the two systems at the center of the circle, they start to just form something that was in harmony. I can't be defeated, which means, there's no defeat in harmony. There is defeat if you go win, lose. But if you're part of a larger harmony, yin and yang, the movement of the yin creates harmonious movement in the yang, and the movement of the yang creates harmonious movement with the yin. And you have what you might call the I-Ki experience. So, yeah. Cliff, before we actually get into the chanting, any questions?
No questions at this time, Sensei. That all sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Most. Yeah.
I've been doing the hand thing, and I'm feeling it. So.
Yeah. One time, it was spring of my first year in Aikido. I think of it because I was a student at that time, academic year. So I started in the fall, and it extended, obviously into the next year. But I think we did an Aikido demo at Merrill campus for something called the Spring thing. There's a whole quad full of people, and Robert Fraser Sensei got them to kind of do, where your partner on your left has palm down to your palm up, and partner on your right has palm up to your palm down. And a whole quad of people, and I remember Robert Fraser said, "Hey, we got this whole quad of people to feel ki," which was kind of cool. See, one of the things is that, if we're kind of in tune with that, now in the world of this dense world of polarization and there's conflict, but we all exist within that field. In fact, you can argue that we have physical bodies. We're very complex. We're matter and energy, but we're biological matter and energy. And all this stuff is happening in reaction out there, and we define ourselves oftentimes by that. But if you start to define yourself as a kind of a citizen of the universe, I remember one time I was walking down one of the streets in Shingu with Hizuchi Sensei. And he's kind of in this sort of funky mood. And, he's looking around. It's a small town in southern Japan, southern part. And, I mean, he's doing a pretty big thing. And there he is in this little sleepy town in this country. And he kind of looks at me and says, "Jack, I am not Japanese." And he used the term Uchujin. Uchu is universe. I'm a universal being. He says, "You too." I went, "Good." I mean, because I'm genetically Japanese. But, you were saying, you in Aikido, you're a citizen of the universe, really. Okay, Uchujin.
Well, speaking as a gaijin myself, I really like that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the whole term gaijin means soto. Soto means outsider. You are an outsider. Don't say gaijin. That usually means you're non-Japanese. But, the Japanese culture has probably changed now. So homogeneous, so to speak. I remember one time, people used to be very rude with Linda, go, gaijin, because she's blonde and American. She sticks out, which is probably kind of cool if you're a certain sort of person. But, on the other hand, she was, it's a drag, It's a drag. There you go. So one time, she and I were, we were in the same, we rent separate rooms in this house. It was about a 25-minute bike ride from the dojos, you know. But anyway, what happens is this kid comes out. And, you know, this is really rude. So he, you know, assuming I'm Japanese, right? He looks at me, he's pointing, he says, Gaijin, 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 you know? And so when I looked at him, I says, Watakushi mo Gaijin desu yo, which in Japanese is, I'm a Gaijin too, which is true. You know, genetically Japanese, but I come from America. And so he goes, you know, like, he's kind of blown away because that's the obvious Gaijin. I said, I'm a Gaijin. And I said, are you Korean? You know, just as a joke. You know, so, and, you know, it's a somewhat racist culture. If you're Chinese or you're Korean, you're Oriental, but you're not Japanese. And he went, whoa. And Linda cracked up because, you know, it was a point where, you know, just kind of like, okay, it's like it's sword. You're going, yeah, you score. And yeah. Anyway. So, yeah, okay, we're getting out there. So this is a little shrine that I brought back during one of my stays from the Hongu Grand Shrine. And these are little things you bought. One's from the Nachi Shrine, the other's from the Hayatama Shrine. So those three are the Kumano, which is kind of the area of Osensei's birthplace, you know, Sanzen, they're kind of like three major shrines. And it's a little shrine there, okay? And usually, you know, you do your seated seiza, or you go to a shrine, you can do it standing, you do the 2 bows and the 4 claps. I tend to do it a little differently here. What I'm going to do is kind of put this off the screen. So instead of doing the 2 bows, I do the 2 bows this way. And instead of doing the 4 claps, I form the Aiki cross. That's interesting that you could go this way, but it's water, fire, fire, water, heaven, earth. So the 4 claps are heaven, earth, water, fire. But I can't go. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually do the ceremony now. Okay. O makarani moto tsumira yasume o kami. あなたの神々を集えてとこと神々迫ります。かむろげかむろみのみこともちて。かむいさなぎのみこと、美しのひむかの、立ち花のどのあがぎがはらみ。急ぎ払い、とむときになりまする。笑いどの狼たち、子供らの、我がごと罪汚れを払いたまえ、清めたまえと申すことのよしを、待つ神、いつ神、よくよろずの神たちともに、目の淵駒の耳取り立てて、ひこしめせとかしこみも申す。かけまくもやにかしこき、おもとつめのおみかみ、 守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。大元爪のおみかみ、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。剣幕まやにかしごき、またらすしますすめのおみかみ、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。またらすしますすめのおみかみ、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。天幕前にかしこき、またらすしますすめのおみかみ、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。またらすしますすめのおみかみ、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。天幕前にがしこき、すさののおみかみ、りたまえ、先あげたまえ。すさののおみかみ、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。分けては熊の御山に沈まれたまお。剣幕前にかしこき、熊野のおみかみ、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。熊野のおみかみ、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。剣幕前にかしこき、アメリカ合衆国のおみかみ、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。アメリカ合衆国のおみかみ、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。剣幕前にかしこき、おいしゅのかわい島のおみかみ、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。おいしゅのかわい島のおみかみ、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。天幕前にかしこき、町の大滝のおみかみ、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。町の大竹のおみかみ、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。剣幕前にかしこき、ウクライナの合衆国とイスラエルの合衆国のおみかみ、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。ウクライナの合衆国とイスラエルの合衆国のおみかみ、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。こんながらまみちひろい、月子に直し主の御事、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。こんながらまみちひろい、月子に直し主の御事、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。かけまくまやにかしこき、いこのみこと、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。いこのみこと、守りたまえ、先あげたまえ。こんながらたまちはいませ。こんながらたまちはいませ。このまからに 神様れます元罪あやすめを。神の御事を用いてやわやらずの神たちを噛むつとげにつとげたまに。おりに借りたまいて水の狼水の狼は豊足原の水の国よ。安くにとだらけぐしろしめさんとはまくだりたまいき。かくはまくだりたましょののくぬちに。荒ぶる神たちをばかむとわしにとわしたまい。かも払いに払いたまいて。おとといしわねきねたち草の柿をもことやめて。雨の岩倉花ち、雨のやいくも、磯のちわきにちわきて天下りたまいき、かく天下りたまいしょもの国中を、安国と定め祭りて、下ついわねに宮頭ふとしたて、高間原にちぎたかしりて、すめを神の水の宮がつけ祭りて、雨の御影、日の御影と隠りまして、安国とだらけぶしろしめさくぬちになり、いいでも、雨のますい虎が過ちをかしてもくさくさの罪ごとは、amatsu罪とは放ち水めくしさしけかきさかはきくそ。ここたくの罪やamatsu罪と乗り分けて、いつ罪とは生き肌立ち死に肌立ちしないとくくみ。おのが母を犯する罪、おのが子を犯する罪、母と子を犯する罪、子と後を犯する罪、獣を犯する罪。虫の災い、高つ神の災い、高つ鳥の災い、獣を倒し、待ち物する罪。ここたくの罪で無くいれば、罪をこともて待つ金木をもと打ち切り数値立ちて、佃の佃に置きたらわして、待つすがそ元借り立ち、すべかり切りて、やかりに取り裂きてや持つのりとの、とのりとごとので、こならば、つかみは雨の岩戸しらきて、雨のやいども、水のちわきにちわきできこしめさ。いつかみは高山の末、雪山の末に登りまして、高山のより、雪山のよりをかき分けてきこしめさ。かくきこしめしては罪という罪。らじとしなどの数と雨のやいくも、吹き放つことのごとく、明日の右に、上の右に、朝風、夕風の吹き払うことのごとく、すべによる解き放ちとも解き放ちて、大田の腹に押し放つことのごとく、肩の刺激がまた焼きがまとが守って、打ち払うことのごとく、残る罪はあだじと払いたまえ、清めたまうこと。高山の水、山の水より桜だりに、落ちた傷あやかばのせにます、成立姫という神。大和田の腹に持ち、いでなむかく持ち、いでいなば。嵐をのしゅのやおじのやしおじのしゅ。やおいにます、あやきつ姫という神。持ちかかのみてむかくかかのみてはいます。牛という神根の国、そこの国。 武器放ちても、かっこいい武器放ちては、矢の国、そこの国にいます。あやさすら姫という神。持ちさすら失いてもかく失いては、うつそみのみにも心にも罪という罪。あらじと笑いたまえ、清めたまえと直すこと、きこしめせと、かしこみも直す。こんな体間違いません。こんな体間違いません。いと二身をいつむゆななやここの二人。ふるべゆらふるべゆらゆら。いと二身をいつむゆななやここの二人。ふるべゆらふるべゆらゆら。いと二身をいつむゆななやここの二人。ふるべゆらふるべゆらゆら。いと二身をいつむゆななやここの二人ももちろす。いと二身をいつむゆななやここの二人ももちろす。いと二身をいつむゆななやここの二人ももちろす。す秋の雲けうらうらと豊坂のさぎこ神の見かけと拝めばその日その日のとしや土にこぼれし草の実の芽生えて伸びて詳しくある秋風花見れば神の恵みのとしやSo anyway, that's the ceremony. Cliff, anything?
No, other than I could kind of feel it even through like a Zoom connection. So that was cool.
Yeah, I mean, basically, spending about 20 minutes chanting ancient Japanese, most of which I don't understand at all. But on the other hand, there are energies that move. And so for me, there's a pretty direct experience of, the actual sense of the mountain echo. If you don't put a sound out, nothing comes back. Although you could argue that silence echoes on itself. But yeah, that's more advanced. Anything else?
No, I don't know that it's something I can really analyze in words.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is I don't know really in terms of when I would sit and at these ceremonies. In fact, it didn't have to be a ceremony. You go to the morning class, and when he taught it, you didn't just leave at 6:30, 7:30, because Hikizuchi Sensei would chant the norito. So a lot of times you go to the morning class and then you stay, and he would come out after the class was over and chant the old sounds, or whatever it is you want to call them, the sacred sounds. And part of me was motivated to learn them. And I know when I first was introduced to it, Mary Heine Sensei, Japanese was good, and she had been exposed to Shingu for longer, so she knew the chants. Linda Holiday Sensei does the chanting as well. I don't know what the long one is the Kami Goto, or Ono Sensei sometimes calls it Oharai Norito, the great sweeping purification Norito. And that's pretty long. Okay. And apparently Osensei would start a class sometimes by chanting the first one, the amatsu norito. But I guess, the thing that when I do the chants, there's an immediacy of the vital force, my own, and then the vital force of the situation, whatever it is. And they kind of start to vibe together. And initially, when I was learning them, I kind of thought it was kind of cool. If you go into the Michael Moorcock books, Elric's not just a swordsman, he's a sorcerer. And sometimes, even with his rune sword, he can't win. He's got to call in the elementals. And he does so, just with chanting. And so, when Hikizuchi Sensei would do the chants, I to be honest with you, when I was first there, I thought of Elric, right? Learning the invocations to summon the elementals. Here, the elementals would be what we call the kami. So, my background in fantasy kind of spurred me to learn that. And then Hikizuchi Sensei, at some point in my training, he started calling me out and yelled at me to get a bokken. And the way I put it is I knew nothing about it. But he was good enough to make me look like I knew something. So it was kind of, I saw him do the sword initially, and then all of a sudden, I was the one call out to kind of do sword to sword with him. Just like at some point in the history of things, there was Osensei working with him. So it was a little bit of a passing on of, what is called, I guess, what is it? It's a direct transmission. Right? Jikiden, direct transmission. In other words, it was not passed on through words. It was, in Japanese term, tamashi or tamashi. Soul spirit to soul spirit in the kami. And, and the same thing with the amatsu norito and the kami goto, and I do a couple other ones. So, any observations or experiences you had during that?
Definitely, experienced a sense of calm and feeling centered. But other than that, I don't have observations that I could add to enlighten.
Yeah, when I was doing it, I was on the ground. My knees were dying, so it was pretty intense. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is very subjective anyway. So, I kind of wonder. Sometimes, I was at it was a sweat lodge where this person was kind of doing Native American stuff. There was a really small group, and he was kind of looking around and saying, one of these days you might be the only one that's into this stuff. And I think his thing was practice anyway. And a lot, I mean, I would go with Shinto ceremonies and stuff. But, when we were in the Shingu dojo, Osensei's beard and hair were enshrined in the dojo shrine. And Hikizuchi Sensei would chant in front of the dojo shrine. So there was a real difference, between Shinto priest chanting and when he chanted. So, I kind of was moved to learn it. I mean, the Elric symbology, were somehow, in fact, in the Morgant books, a lot of that stuff he learned by traveling to a dream dimension, if I remember properly. And when he was going to call the wind elementals or the water elementals, he had to just sort of from his subconscious, the proper invocation sounds had to come out. So at this point, I don't really remember the sounds. It's more like, just sort of channeling. Right? And I remember Mary Heine Sensei and I, we were just back from Japan, and Osawa Sensei, Osawa Senior from Hombu Dojo came through. And he brought this documentary with him. It's an NHK documentary. It was called The King of Aikido, about Osensei. And it was photographed and filmed in Iwama. And there's a scene where he does the amatsu norito, which is the first one we did. And it was a real trip because the way I learned it, I mean, you go, Kamaharani Makatsumiya, the energies come up. They're not chanting to somebody, I'm chanting. There's that, but also, the sounds kind of come up. Ko, and it's a vital force in them. And a lot of ways, the sense of it, but there's silences and there's intonations, like, in the Michael Moorcock books, Elric had to kind of really clear. In fact, it was almost like it wasn't him chanting. It was kind of, the lineage of the kings of Melnibone and the connection they had to the elementals through the gods of chaos, or whatever you want to call it. And he had to clear enough because the voice had to get the intonations and the spacings right to call the elementals in. And what I noticed was that the way Osensei chanted it, you don't go one, it's a space, but it's not dead. And so what I noticed was that, I learned it from Hikizuchi Sensei. And he had a certain way of, just rising, falling of the intonations. And there's a spacing between the phrasing. And when Osensei chanted the norito, I said, that was a great gift. Because in studying from Hikizuchi Sensei, I was doing the same breath work, sound work, that was modeled after the way Osensei did it. And there's a clip on YouTube of Deguchi Onisaburo Sensei's teacher for a lot of this stuff. He got a lot of the physical movements from Takeda Sensei of Daido Ryu, but then again, a lot of what really opened his eyes to the universe was Deguchi Onisaburo Sensei. And there's a clip on YouTube of Deguchi Sensei chanting amatsu norito. And so it's not exactly the same, but it's similar. And so when you listen to Deguchi Sensei and you listen to Osensei, and then my major exposure was Hikizuchi Sensei, then to some degree, you're placing yourself around a lineage. Now, I don't, and part of me goes, well, who's going to carry on? I mean, Linda Sensei, I think she tried to teach some of her students some of these sounds. And the thing that was kind of interesting for her, because we had a discussion about it, is the students couldn't get the actual, they chanted it like it was a song. Okay? You can learn the words and whatever that way, but there's a kind of a vital force to it. And, it's not, not everybody can, I'm not saying, I think everybody can do it, but it's a depth thing. If I listen to Chet Baker play, the way he uses through the horn, some degree vocally, the spacing between the phrases, the way that he kind of will take a note and add a little something to it. I've always gravitated to him in terms of music. He's kind of my teacher, even though I never met him, right? And I actually put something on recently. It's a Miles Davis piece that he played quite a bit called Four, F-O-U-R, number 4. It's the last post I did on, and you don't know what you're doing. You're playing and it's just coming through. And I listened to it, I said, that's pretty good. I hadn't recorded in a long time. But the same thing, you play, space is created. You play, but within the playing, there's like what I do when I kind of play the trumpet, is I don't hear sounds. I see kind of a topography. And then within a space, there's energy movement. And so, I'm nowhere near. I mean, it's like what I'm doing compared to Osensei is probably pretty insignificant. And likewise, when I play the horn, what I do compared to what Chet Baker could do is pretty insignificant. But I'm a lot of times, I'm really I have a sense of detail with the source material. Anyway, I think we probably better go. I'm going to do a shorter ceremony on Sunday at the class in Mountain View. Anyway, I thank you for tuning in.
I do have one observation, Sensei,
Yeah, sure. Yes.
based on what you just said a couple minutes ago, which is that in jazz, the melody and the chord progression are the framework that creates the space for the changes to happen, for the music to happen.
Yeah.
And I think similarly, the text of the noriko is the space that allows for what you did to happen, right? It's like the chord progression or the song melody. And I think similarly in Aikido, the forms that we know, like Shomenuchi Ikkyo, Katate Dore Shihonage, anything like that, is the container that creates the space that allows movement. So I think that's a really interesting analogy.
Okay.
That's my profound thought for the day.
Okay, good. I think it's a very good, profound thought. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Sensei. See you Sunday.
Yeah, see you Sunday.